Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do my memorable decks of 2023, the decks that really made an impression on me or that were maybe the most used in my practice. And today, with the exception of three that I'm going to mention, technically four decks, three categories that I'm going to mention at the end of this video, which are decks that I had the biggest moments with, we're going to do this playing with pair style. So let's start with some of the pairings that I used the most throughout 2023. These are also decks that I used quite a bit in my practice, just in a general sense as well. So we're going to start with tarot, which is this beautiful mass market tarot deck that I think has been around for quite a while. You can get it on its own or it does come as part of a set. However, this one is my favorite, and this one is the one that I most often use in my practice. And I pair that with this gorgeous oracle deck, which is probably, if I had to pick like one oracle deck that I would say is my most used in my collection overall, it would probably be this one. And this is the Earth Wisdom Oracle. I've edged both these decks as well. I'll try to remember to note that whenever it comes up, as well as whether they are mass market or indie. These are both mass market decks, both by the amazing Barbara Moore. I absolutely love Barbara Moore's decks. I have a ton of them. But this is I think my favorite oracle, not only that Barbara Moore has done, but also that is just the most used, the most versatile. It fits into the most spaces in my collection. I absolutely love the imagery. I think it's gorgeous, but also the keywords are just really succinct, really spot on, but also like super expansive. Can you be those two things at once? Can you be succinct and expansive at the same time? Somehow this deck does that. So the other really fantastic thing about this deck is actually in the guidebook, because in the guidebook you get these fantastic little messages, but also it notes the plant and the crystal that is found on each and every card. And there is just something about the way that guidebook is written that it just, like, whatever it is, whether it's a focal point or a sum up or however it is that I'm using this deck, those messages just sit in alignment so perfectly every time. So it's definitely a guidebook that I get into and use often. So let's talk about these two beautiful decks and working with them together. I most often use the Earth Wisdom as my connection to where I am, my focal point, what's going on, what I need to be aware of in the mundane, the material, the earthly realm. And then I expanded that with the As Above deck for that conduit between me and the divine realm. So how do I take this energy? How do I channel down from the divine realm into it? How do I bring it into being? How do I integrate those two things into my everyday life? And something about the way these two decks work together, this very earthly realm, which does also have some very deep spiritual ties in the deck, and as well as the messages, but sits very firmly in that sort of mundane, everyday, very grounded, rooted into the earth energy for me. And then when I pair that with the As Above deck, it really just helps me to tap into that divine realm and to kind of like bring it down into earth. I've done a few videos, I think, here and there. It was either here, maybe in my member space, where I've talked about working with my kind of As Above, So Below decks and how I work with them together. This is the pairing that I use the most often. Sometimes I will integrate other decks into it, but these were kind of the foundational ones. These were the ones that the Earth Wisdom provided that focal point, that anchor, that root into the earth. And then the As Above was my conduit to the divine. It was my conduit to magic, to creation, to whatever higher self, higher plane, higher vibrational energy that I was trying to access. Most of the time, this was really in alignment with my creative work. So when I'm doing things like trying to create art or write, or even to some extent, create content, those are all very creative endeavors. And a lot of times I like to use my sort of As Above, So Below pairing, or As Above Earth Wisdom pairing, because there is a So Below deck, which I do sometimes incorporate into this mix as well. But these two I really like for tapping into that creative work, because they allow me to kind of feel like I can stretch my creative muscles into the sort of universal connection, that source, that all, right? That whatever it is that ties us all together, ties us to the earth, which is tied to the cosmos, which is floating in this giant vacuum of space, which just blows my mind, and I love it to no end. This is what helps me connect to that. This is what helps me tap into it. And it brings it down into this very earthy place where I feel like I can access it. I know what to do with it. I have an understanding and a language, a root into my own sense of self and my own way of being. And then this deck allows me to expand upon that, or these decks, I should say. This combo, this pairing, if you will, allows me to expand upon that. So this was definitely my most used pairing for that type of work. It's not the only pairing that I used, but I really did enjoy it. And it was probably the one that I turned to the most often when I was looking to create that connection between the as above and the so below. So another pairing that I will be honest kind of blew me away this year, and that I worked with a ton, kind of similar to how I worked with the As Above and the Earth Wisdom. This is the Heavenly Blooms Tarot and the Earth Magic Oracle. Now the Heavenly Blooms I have de-gilded, so I took the shiny pink gilding off. Yes, it was pretty, but it hurt my hands. So I took that off, and this deck, like, okay, so it sits in that space of like decks that make my gamer heart happy. That was like a video I made this year, right? And to me, this deck has all the Final Fantasy vibes. I just feel like every time I step into this deck, I am like stepping into that world, and it's kind of amazing. I love it. I love everything about this deck. I think it's fantastic. It has such a great personal connection to me now. I really like the renaming of the suits. I love that each of the suits also has like a clan. So there's story here, there's narrative written into this deck as well, which I really appreciate and I love working with in my practice. But this deck to me is kind of where the deck I would go to when I need to access that sort of fantasy place, that stepping outside of the reality. But I really enjoyed pairing it with the Earth Magic Oracle, because even though as much as I want to exist and fully in this like beautiful fantasy world, right? That's not reality. I like have a life and a family and friends, and I have people that need me to come out of the fantasy from time to time, right? And so I loved using the Earth Magic Oracle as a way to, again, similarly to the Earth Wisdom Oracle, allowed me to create that conduit, that route, that connection point to the mundane, to the everyday, to the place in which I actually live, right? I mean, I want to spend my days running around fantasy worlds and, you know, like romancing pale vampires. Of course, who doesn't? But that's not the world I can exist in all the time. And so this is a great combo that allows me to really dive into this fantasy world that we see here as represented through the Heavenly Blooms, but also root it deep into the everyday. We'll see how many times I can knock into my little plant while trying to arrange decks on my table. Y'all, it's the end of the year. I've given up on trying to decorate anything. I'm over it. Okay, so let's take a look at these beautiful decks together. So how I work with this, again, very similar to what I talked about, the As Above Earth Wisdom, where I've got the Oracle that is that route into the mundane, into real life, let's say, right? Into what's really going on, into how I can actually be in the world. And then the Heavenly Blooms is like this wonderful fantasy world that I can step into and I can immerse myself in and get messages from and engage with on that sort of fantasy level. And what this beautiful combination does is it kind of gives me this like balance between what is reality and what is fantasy. What is what I want it to be versus what it actually is, because sometimes those can be two very different things. So here we have Lake with Stillness. Beautiful. Look at this imagery together. We have the King of Laurels and the Fool over here. Like what I want is in this fantasy world over here. Like I want to go out and explore and I want to be the master of my own domain and all that kind of stuff, right? But what I need, what I actually need in this moment is this lake, this stillness, this quiet and calm. And so these two decks are really great together to kind of give me that balance between what the fantasy self wants and what the actual self needs. And it's just such an interesting combo. I mean, I've worked with these two decks in many different ways. I've used it for for my monthly practice. I've used it for just everyday readings. I've used it for all kinds of wonderful things. But where I found it really shine for me, it was in this sort of fantasy versus reality sort of reading. That's something that Marlena actually kind of came up with. It was her little brainchild that I'm just like jumping onto. I'll try to find her video where she talked about it, because that was one of the reasons that got me thinking about working in with this deck combo in that way, was after watching her video and talking to her about it. So definitely want to give credit where credit's due there. But again, this allows me to go, okay, here's what the fantasy self wants, right? The fantasy self wants, oh, all the beautiful things. And I just want to tap into this, you know, enormous creative potential within me and just like let it unfold. But also like, I just want to be done and I want to be in that space of, look at this beautiful thing that I did. But what I really need right now is this shaman energy, this ancient healing wisdom. And so I think that these just work really well in that sense, because I do have a tendency to kind of look at things through my fantasy self lens, as in my fantasy self lens thinks I can do all the things all the time and like never rest and never cut back, never take a break. Like, it's always going. My fantasy self is always going. It's always creating. That's really where it sounds weird to say like it's a struggle, but that's really where I struggle, is I want to do all the things all the time, or I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum and I want to do nothing. So I really struggle with that balance in between. And this little combo is such a great way for me to really look at where that energy is showing up for me and how can I balance it. So another pairing that, you know, really kind of like rocked my socks. That's a thing people say, right? Okay, so another pairing that really rocked my world, let's go with that one, is the Tarot de Carlotydes and the Modern Nirvana Oracle. These two decks together. So unlike the Heavenly Blooms, which kind of sits in this like really fantasy, like I said, Final Fantasy kind of world, but really in the fantasy landscape, this little Tarot de Carlotydes, even though it does have like some fanciful images to it, it feels a little bit more in the everyday for me. It's more modern, which tends to feel more in the moment for me. Like this is what's going on right here, right now. And the thing I really like about this deck is there is a little bit of humor to it, and I really appreciate that, because sometimes you just need a little humor in your day. But this deck works really well for me for that kind of not that fantasy self, but that reality self, right? Like here's the real deal, man, of what's up, and this deck really taps into that beautifully for me. Then pairing that with the Modern Nirvana. This is such a cool oracle deck. I do have to occasionally get into the guidebook, but you know, I've been working with this deck so long now that even the sigils, so I think that's what I mentioned when I first, like the first few times I worked with it, was like, I'm great with some of the keywords, like I really like the keywords, and I'm great with most of them until we get to the sigils, and then like I don't know what a lot of these things are. But you know, like anything, the more you use it, the more you know it, the better you get with it, right? And so I found that these two together are fantastic for tapping me into right here, right now. These are decks that, while I have used them for longer term practices, they feel more fleeting. They feel more in the moment. This is not necessarily something that I need to be working on for weeks on end. It's usually not, you know, super deep work that I'm gonna have to keep touching base with, keep digging into, keep, you know, pushing through, keep trying to understand. This is right now. This is here. This is this moment. And I love a deck combo that really sits in that space for me too. I'm not a huge fan of like modern decks. I don't have a ton of them. The ones I do have tend to be more in the collage world, because that just tends to be more my vibe for modern decks. But one of the things that this modern deck combo does for me is it's like, here's right here, right now, right? So right here, right now is Know Thyself with the Seven of Pentacles and the Knight of Wands. That's what I need in this moment. And this is a pairing that, although, like I've said, I've used it for many practices, I've done many types of readings with it. This is the deck and the little combo that I have turned to most often this year when I just need to pull cards right here, right now to get a beat on something. Usually on me. Like, what's up right here, right now? We have Greatness, Justice, and the Ten of Wands. That feels appropriate. Transcendence, Strength, and the Empress. It's just such a fantastic reader. It is very Rider-Waite-Smith in a lot of places. It definitely goes its way in some places. There's lots of fairy tales. There's lots of pop culture references in the Tarot de Carlotydes. And there's something about that pairing with the, like, really cool energy of the modern Nirvana. I think when I first got it, I was like, this deck is too cool for me, y'all. Like, I'm not that cool. Like, I'm really a nerd. I'm just not that cool. And this deck felt like something that somebody else would use. Somebody cooler than me, right? Somebody that's like, I don't even know, because like I'm old and I'm not cool. So I don't even know how to explain it. But I say that. And yet what I find is that these two decks together, it doesn't matter. They transcend age. They transcend, in a strange way, space. It's just like it takes all of the excess out of everything and just really helps me to like hone in and focus in on right this 5 minutes, what I need to know right now. I love both of these cards. So many of the images in Tarot de Carlotydes are amazing. I love them. Some of my favorite images actually exist in this deck. And the modern Nirvana is just like, oh man, it's such a good deck. Like in the messages in the guidebook, I do get into the guidebook for this oracle. And it's funny because sometimes with oracles, I'm like, I don't want to use the guidebook, right? Don't make me. I get like really like inner teenagey angsty with it. I'm like, I'm not going to read the guidebook and you can't make me, so go away. I love this Three of Pentacles too. And this Two of Cups with Nourishment. How perfect is that? I love when cards do that. Anyway, a lot of times I get really angsty about guidebooks and I'm like, no, I'm not going to read it because you can't tell me what to do. But this is a guidebook that I think actually is really amazing and I really enjoy the messages in it. And so I do every time get into the guidebook to see what's in there. So this is just such a fantastic pairing for like in the moment. It's not a deep dive for me. It's not a long-term study exploration. It is a, like, I hate to say it in this way, but it's like a quick and dirty reader, right? I just need it right now. Like, just give it to me right now. Give it to me straight. That's what I need. And this little combo like delivers every single time. So it's definitely one of my favorites. And I love when it makes me laugh. This Hierophant card makes me giggle every time I see it. And that's also a thing for me. I love a deck that in the moment like can just take me out of whatever mood I'm in and just shift the energy around for me. This deck does that really well. Let's step back into that sort of like spacey kind of like portal energy vibe because like y'all know I'm into some portal energy. It's like my jam, right? It's like the traversing liminal spaces. I love that. And there's decks that I use for that. And the two decks that I use the most often for that are the Tarot of the Cat People and the Gateway of Light Activation Oracle, which I call my portal deck. It's not the name of the deck. There is a deck named the Portal Oracle. I do not like that deck. This is my portal deck. So I apologize because I always forget the name of this deck and I just end up calling it my portal deck. But I'm looking at the box. It is the Gateway of Light Activation Oracle. Anyway, let's talk about Tarot of the Cat People first because this deck, if I had to pick one deck that was like my most surprising deck of the year, it would be this one. I just thought the color palette was really cool. Like, I'm not like super into cats or anything. I'm actually highly allergic to cats. I've talked about that before. So we have kind of like, you know, we keep a respectful distance from each other. But this deck is like full on like cat people alien vibe thing. Like, these are not really cat people to me. These are like aliens from another world, another dimension. And Like it's so cool. And it's such a great reader. I don't know. It surprised me. It surprised me. I'm gonna try to articulate that more in better words here when we flip through the decks together. And the Gateway of Light activation is, I keep forgetting to mention mass market or indie. I think everything we've looked at is mass market so far. It is. Look at that. It's almost like I knew what I was doing. Okay, so this is also mass market oracle. I have edged mine. I know I've shown this deck and talked about it many times because I've used this deck for all kinds of things. This is kind of like my go-to sort of portal energy oracle deck. It's like the one if I'm like looking to like try to traverse a different mindset. This is kind of the deck that I go to for that. I also use it a lot for when I don't really know what I need. So I'll pull a card and then let the card dictate like what portal energy I need to tap into. So I've used it a lot for that. But in working with these two together, I basically use the Gateway of Light activation. It's such a long name, so why I just call it my portal deck. I use my portal deck as that like portal energy, right? That stepping through into a different mindset is really what it is for me. I could say it's liminal space. We could say it's, you know, stepping into another state of being in some way, shape, or form. But really a lot of times what it is for me is a shifting of a mindset, right? So I will use this deck as my focal point. That's the portal energy, which I'm going to step into. And then I use the Tarot of the Cat People to kind of explore that realm. So like we have the Crystal Skull Wisdom with clarity, divine healing, and higher vibrational energy with the King of Wands and the Ace of Cups. So once I step through that Crystal Skull Wisdom, shifting into that mindset of clarity, divine healing, I'm going to engage with that King of Wands and Ace of Cups energy. This tends to be most frequently how I work with these two decks together, although I will say like I often pull in the Isis Oracle with this. I did try to keep this to just pairings and not really getting into like my whole deck family thing, because I do have lots of decks that there's like 3 or 4 of them that kind of all come out together. I've talked about deck families many times on my channel. This is definitely part of a deck family with like the Isis Oracle, Earth Power Oracle, and some of those types of decks. But these two are the two that I use the most often together because I use, again, I was going to say portal deck, the Gateway of Light activation. I use it as that, it's an activation, right? It's a portal. It's the entry point into it. And then the tarot helps me to expand upon and explore where that energy is showing up for me, how I can maybe shift my mindset around it, shift my state of being, whatever it is that I need to do in the moment. These are sometimes decks that I use in the moment, like I showed or talked about with the Carlotydes and then Modern Nirvana, but also decks that I use a lot of times when I'm in working in creative spaces. So when I'm trying to shift out of the mundane, out of the everyday, and shift into that creative space work, I will often use this little pairing as a way, as a conduit, as a portal into that creative space. So I'm kind of stepping away from the everyday and stepping into that. And I love the cat people for this because they're people-y, right? So like there's people energy here. And I can engage with the archetypes of those energies and things like that, but they're not human. So they're like one step removed from me, from my current state of being. So it makes it easier for me to use this as sort of that transition deck, portaling into a different sort of state of being or a different mindset. It's great for, it's really great for like if you're writing science fiction, fantastic for that. I also do work with both of these decks like independently. I'll use, like I mentioned, this one, I'll use it to just pull a card to see what portal energy I need, and then I'll match my tarot to that. So not necessarily using Tarot of the Cat People. If I got the Akashic Stargate here, maybe I might pull in, I freaking love this card. Yes, just because it says Stargate. I am that big of a nerd. Anyway, if I were to get this card, I would probably pull out my Akashic Tarot, would probably be, you know, or maybe my Star Child Tarot, one of those might be something that I would pull out to engage with. You know, whereas if I got something like this, maybe I might pull out my, is it called Art of Love anymore? I don't even know what that deck's called anymore. It was Art of Love. I think it got a new name, but I can't remember. But anyway, point being, like, I would pull out different decks based on what oracle I got. And the Tarot of the Cat People, I use this for all kinds of things. It's not even just trying to step into that portal energy. Sometimes I will pair this with the Isis Oracle, and it becomes like the voice of Isis, the message that's coming through from Isis. Like I'm not gonna pull it out, and I'm not gonna do a pairing because it's gonna throw off all my planning here. But with this it works beautifully with this. All right, let's talk about another often used pairing in my collection, and this is my White Numen Tarot with the Deck of Many Things and Fates, which is not an oracle deck. It is actually a D&D deck based in that world, and I use it like an oracle deck. Let's talk about the White Numen first. I love this deck. I've mentioned many times this is also a deck that it kind of sits in that makes my gamer heart happy vibes, because this to me just feels like an amalgamation of every video game I've ever played. There's like Final Fantasy vibes, there's big time Zelda vibes in this deck, which I absolutely love. A little bit of Animal Crossing, like, you know, just all my favorite little cozy games that I've played all throughout my life, and they just all feel like they've come together in this one deck. I know that's probably not the creator's intention, but that's how I work with it. And the Deck of Many Fates and Things, as I mentioned, is a D&D deck. Oh, I have edged this deck. I keep forgetting. Both of these are mass market. Oh my goodness. The last two decks were mass market. Tarot of the Cat People might be out of print now. I will look it up. Anyway, this is a deck of fates and things, and it's meant to be used in D&D in a campaign, and I use it as an oracle deck because it has some really interesting, very thought-provoking, completely un-oracle-like messages, and I love that about it. I also really love, there's a ton of these out there, like you can buy a ton of different creators. I love this one in particular. It's really easy to, it's really readily available. It is very affordable, and I think the artwork is absolutely stunning. This is my pairing that I use not only when I just want to like legit sit down and play with cards, and like I don't necessarily need a message. I always get one, but I don't necessarily need a message. I just want to play. I just want to have a play with my cards. These are the two decks that I will pull out most often. But another thing that I have found that happens when working with these two decks is that the Deck of Many Fates and Things, because it is not a traditional oracle, has some really interesting phrases on it, really interesting ideas represented. So I will use it a lot of times as like kind of like that anchor, that focal point into the message. So like here we have Ruin, and it says, besides magic items, all forms of wealth that you carry or own are vanished. That includes businesses, lands, and holdings. Paired with the Death and the Chariot card, I mean, like, that's kind of cool. Like, what would you do? These are really thought-provoking pulls for me. What would I do if, like, everything I had was gone? Like, if I was in this, like, everything died, everything went away, right? And then I would have to like move on from there. So it's interesting. They're very thought-provoking a lot of times. Sometimes they're just plain fun, and it's so cool to see how it can traverse those two very, very opposite ends of the spectrum. It can be extremely thought-provoking and making me think about like big life picture things, and sometimes it's just like, okay, idiot, permanently reduce your intelligence and draw again. Right? So I would do that. Like, okay, you're being an idiot between this Queen of Pentacles and the King of Swords. So like draw again. Or maybe I draw another card if I was working with, you know, a couple of different decks. It's just such a fun and interesting way to add an oracle message that isn't intended to be an oracle message. And sometimes it has things that like you'll do, so there's a little bit of that like gameplay element, like draw again because like you're an idiot, so draw again. And sometimes it offers me advice. So here we have like Vizier. It says, once within the next year you may ask any question and receive a truthful, helpful solution. And I've got the Temperance and the Four of Pentacles here. So really interesting combination. It's so different. And I think aesthetically it pairs really beautifully with the White Numen. It also pairs really beautifully with the Mage the Awakening. It's just such an interesting way to work with an oracle message. So moving into a little bit different energy here, we're gonna start looking at some of the more newer pairings that I've been playing with. So decks that I've been playing with through the latter half of the year, whereas the ones that I've shown so far have really been decks that have been with me all year long. These next few are either newer decks to me or newer pairings that I've been exploring. So this particular little pairing is actually tarot and tarot, which I don't do very often, but I do kind of use this tarot like an oracle, so it works. This is the Disney Villain Tarot, and I've talked about and raved about this deck and my love for it, and like that has not has not faded one bit. I still think this is an amazing deck. Both of these are mass market. This one, actually, I've modified both of these. I just edged this one in purple. Yeah, purple. Yep, it's purple. And then we have the Beautiful Creatures Tarot, which is fairly new to my collection this year. I de-gilded this so it had shiny purple gilding, which was pretty, but I hated it because it hurt my hand, so I de-gilded it and I edged it in purple. And this is a tarot deck, but you'll notice that there's keywords on it, so I do tend to use it more like an oracle. So it actually works really well in this same kind of playing with pairs sort of energy that I tend to work with these decks in. So this little pairing came about when I started like getting particularly angsty toward the latter part of the year, which is really when I start like really getting ready for the year to end and I'm ready to move on to new and different things. This little combination, and I've shown the villains before and I've used it many times. It might have been in a Playing with Pairs where I talked about using it with the Blessed Bee Oracle. Again, I'm not going to pull that one out. I do have a video, so I'll mention that. And that's a great combo, but when I started pulling in the Beautiful Creatures to it, there's something about this energy that is just like, it is full on angsty teen vibes. This is like, you know, I'm reliving my 20s at this point in my life. And like, I'm 45, my kids are grown. Like my youngest is 20, I know, do the math, but my youngest is 20. I am at this point in my life where I can explore all the things that I don't want to say I missed out on, but yeah, kind of missed out on because I was raising kids when I was very, very young. And so this is like when I'm sitting in that energy, when I'm like in my angsty teenager self, this is like the perfect combination for me. I will go to these decks and like most times they'll actually just validate what I'm feeling. And I think there is definite value in that. I sometimes just need some validation. It's like when you go to a friend and you say, okay, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to validate my feelings around this situation because like I know what I think. And I just need somebody else to tell me, yeah, they see it too. And that's kind of what this deck does. Or this little combo does. It like takes all of my angsty energy and it validates that as a, you know, not only appropriate, but also creative and fun exploration. It's a great state of being to be in. And I just need to make sure that I am like letting it out at, you know, at appropriate times, inappropriate moments, when I have the time to like, you know, be angsty. And it's such a great one for like making space for me to sit in that energy as well. Because sometimes I'm like, I'm feeling the angsty energy, but I can't tap into it right now. It's not the time and place for it. So I will pull out these decks, for these two in particular, and I'll do a reading that kind of like, it's like it sees me, it sees the angst beneath it, and it kind of lets me explore it in this space where I can, you know, do what I need to do with it in the moment, even though maybe at this 5 minutes, like I can't be full on angsty me, right? Like I have to take care of my things and be a grown up and like be responsible, right? But sometimes I don't want to. And so this is a deck that I go to when I don't want to be an adult. It's really what it is. It's the combo, right? This is my I don't want to adult anymore combo, and I absolutely love it. It is like among my favorites in my collection. I use the Beautiful Creatures. The artwork is gorgeous. I know this artwork is not everybody's cup of tea. There was a whole discussion in my Discord about it, which I get you. I wasn't there either for a really long time. But it's got the beautiful artwork and it's got these wonderful keywords down at the bottom. And I use those like an oracle message. So even though technically it is a tarot, I just see it as kind of like a 78 card oracle. Actually, I think it has maybe 1 or 2 bonus cards, so maybe even more. If the Tarot Association does feel appropriate, then I will pull that in as well. But for the most part, I let it function as an oracle using the keywords. So here we have Imprisonment with the 2 of Wands and the Devil. I mean, how perfect is that? I just love the way the energies on these 2 decks align. They just feel so compatible. And they feel like they just sit in this world of, yes, it's okay to be angsty. It's okay to not want to be a grown-up and do all the things. It's okay to want to play. And this little combo like completely validates that for me. So the last 3 pairings that I have for you in this little section of my memorable deck pairings feature an indie tarot with a mass market oracle. This in And all of them are fairly new in my practice and in my collection. This is the Astral Mermaid Tarot. It came in this beautiful black gilded. First of all, to me, this isn't a mermaid deck, it's an alien deck. So like, I love it for that. It's got this gorgeous like cyberpunk mermaid fantasy world alien spacey thing going on that is just, I don't know, there's just something about it that is just so my jam. I love it. I absolutely love it. I have another cyberpunk deck that I haven't gotten into yet, but I'm excited for that one for next year. But this deck it's just like such a fun, amazing reader. I'm gonna be honest, like I haven't really found its place in what I'm going to like use it for in my practice. If anything, not every deck in my collection needs to have a space or a slot or a purpose. Sometimes I just have decks because I enjoy working with them. Also, there's like orcas. You know, just saying, because I enjoy working with them, because they make me happy, because they, you know, give me good messages, whatever the case may be. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But a lot of times the decks that end up being my favorites do end up being multifaceted in that way, where I can use them for very specific things, as well as just, you know, general, I want to play with this deck today kind of energy. And this one is the Healing Spirits Oracle. And this is a deck that, like, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's your typical like spacey vibes of like, you know, tapping into that sort of astral, celestial place and messages. But yeah, like it kind of is. And I love it. And I specifically love it with the Astral Mermaid Tarot. And I'll be perfectly honest, I was kind of on the fence of even keeping the Healing Spirits when the Astral Mermaid showed up, because like I have a lot of decks that sit in this space of this like cosmic connection kind of energy. I do think the messages are really great on this particular deck and the guidebook's really good. But again, I have lots of decks that sit in that space, so I wasn't sure that I really needed another one. And then I paired it with the Astral Mermaid Tarot, and there is just something about the cohesiveness between the artwork and the way that the Oracle deck pulls out that sort of interesting cosmic connected, yes, sort of in that healing sort of energy from the Astral Mermaid. So it like takes it to a different level. And there's something about the artwork that feels just very cohesive, very compatible. Like there's a lot of like bubbles and dots and like stars and cosmos and nebulas and like that sort of space imagery. But the colors all really align and the art styles seem very, very similar. And they just feel like they were kind of made for each other. And so this is one of those cases where I'm keeping the Oracle deck because it pairs so beautifully with the Astral Mermaid Tarot. It is like, I call them pet decks, which I should probably do a video on, because it's an Oracle deck that I only have because it works so well with this, because I want to use it every time I pull out the Astral Mermaid Tarot. And funny enough, like usually I use my Oracles as a sort of focal point, like an anchor to my message. A lot of times I use this one as the takeaway when I'm working with the Astral Mermaid Tarot. So I'll kind of let the tarot do its own thing, give me its message, you know, provide whatever it needs to provide for me in that moment, kind of like uninfluenced by the Oracle deck. And then I will add the Healing Spirits Oracle to it at the end of the reading as kind of like that takeaway message. So it functions more as a wrap up than an anchor point. The Astral Mermaid Tarot itself is the anchor for me. And the Oracle just kind of like is the sum up. So even though I'm showing it in this combination, it's not really how I would work with it. I would be using it in a 3-card spread. This is not the best way to do this. So these were my 3 cards. This was my message. And then I would pull one of these for a wrap up. So your life plan is unfolding as it should, and that would be my wrap up message to these 3 cards. So yeah, I really love this deck combo, but like I'm gonna be honest, I've only kept the Oracle deck because it pairs so beautifully with the Astral Mermaid Tarot, which I am just like completely head over heels in love with. Something about this deck just really, really does it for me. So our next deck combo pairs again a Indie Tarot deck. This is the Gentle Tarot with a mass market oracle, the Magical Spirit Oracle. This combo, this combo has become my, like, I need a hug. This is now my new hug deck combo, and I have used the heck out of it. It's not just so much that I need a hug, it's like the I need a hug, but and also a real message, right? It's not, and that's the thing with the Gentle Tarot. It is very appropriately named. It is such a gorgeous sort of hug deck energy, but it also, there's so much substance here, especially if you get into the guidebook. Whether you have the small one or the big one, they're both fantastic, but getting into the guidebook just reveals even more. And then pairing that with this Magical Spirit Oracle, which I'll be honest, has not left my desk since I got it. I love the artwork and I love the messages. It has like these gorgeous messages in the card art, but it also has a keyword and a couple of key phrases. There is just so much to work with that this is a fantastic focal point oracle deck for me. This is like when I need a message, like a supportive message from the universe. This is the deck I'm going to. And when I'm looking for how I can bring that and let it show up in my actual everyday life, that's where the Gentle Tarot comes in. And these two are just so fantastic together. They're so supportive. They're so nurturing. It's like anytime I'm feeling like a little bit lost, I've been pulling these two out because the oracle deck kind of like gives me that focal point, you know, the way I like to use my oracle. Like, here's the thing to focus on, but it feels like it's coming from this very expansive universal space where it's like, you know, it's that whole, I hate this phrase, but the universe has your back. I hate that phrase, but that's kind of the energy that it's got. Like it's gonna be okay, kind of just trusting that things will work out the way that they are meant to. And the Gentle Tarot just really reaffirms that message, but it shows me how I can take this message and apply it, you know, in my real life, in my everyday. So here we have the Alchemist with Empowerment, Pain, and Sorceress. And then the message on the card, and some of these are just fantastic. It says, oh, I don't break that easy, not anymore. Instead, I use things as fuel. It's very empowering. And then we have that with the Star and the Six of Thunder. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's such an empowering oracle deck that when I'm feeling lost, when I'm feeling tender, when I'm feeling like, y'all, I have no idea what I'm doing, which I know surprises people, but like that's me most days. I'm secretly a hot mess, not so secretly if you're in my membership, but there are a lot of days when I don't really have a clue, man. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know why I'm doing the things that I do. And this little pairing is really great at just kind of making me stop for a minute and think about, okay, this is where it's showing up for me. This is why I do these things. This is why I need to engage with this energy, whatever the case may be. Like emotions with the Flower of Cups and the Harvest of Thunder. I mean, beautiful. Honoring the flow of all the emotions, definitely something I struggle with. And it's just such a gorgeous, supportive, sort of, I don't want to say really like hug deck because I feel like that feels very limiting. This is so expansive. It is like taking that energy from that it's gonna be okay energy, but like seriously, you do need to do something with it. Like things aren't just gonna magically be okay. I guess that's where I'm at with it. Like I know things are gonna be okay, but I know they're not magically gonna be okay. I have to put effort into it. I have to do something to make it okay. And that is what this combination does for me. It shows me how I can do that, and it does it in a way that's so supportive and beautiful and comforting. And I love the kind of like this cosmic, again, we're like completely circling back here to the sort of as above, so below energy, which is just, that's just me. I've tried to explain it like many times, but it's like my feet are very, very rooted into the earth and where I am right here, right now. But like my mind, my spirit, my soul, like it's always off. It's always off, like traveling the cosmos. Like my body is here, but the rest of me is not, right? But I'm very aware that my body is here. And so this type of combination is just, it works so beautifully for me because I get that sort of universal conduit connection here with the Magical Spirit Oracle, but then it shows up for me and helps me to see it in the actual everyday of my real life through the Gentle Tarot. And it's just, it's so amazing. So our last little memorable deck pairings of 2023 is the Tabletop Tarot with the Women of Myth Oracle deck. Look at these backs together. I don't ever lay my cards face down, so I'd never get to see the backs together. They're really beautiful. This deck, y'all, this deck is very new to my collection, and it is like, I've shown it in many, many videos. It has not left my table. It is a D&D based deck based in the D&D world. There are lots of like pop culture D&D references in this deck, which are fantastic. It makes me so happy every time I get it out. I've mentioned in one of my videos, this is the book Legends and Lattes in a deck. It is comfy, it is cozy, it is supportive. It's that beautiful, cozy fantasy energy all in a tarot, and I am just here for it. I have used this deck for just about everything. So I've been pairing it. I've paired it with a lot of things, I'll be honest, but I've been pairing it most recently with this Women of Myth, and I think this is such a cool deck. The cardstock is terrible, but it's such a cool deck. It's got this whole women, monsters, heroines, monsters, and goddesses. And the messages that come through the cards, the energy of the cards themselves is just fantastic. So this little combo, if I can get the decks to behave, is one that I've been playing with a lot for when things are feeling a bit rough. I'm using the Women of Myth to kind of look at where that rough energy, where that challenge energy is coming through, and maybe what I can pull into like working with it, how I can work with it better, how I can better understand it. And then I'm using the tarot, the Tabletop Tarot in particular, to help me kind of look at it deeper, dive into it deeper, see what I need to understand about that energy. And I love the way that it does it in this, like, completely speaks to the part of me that like does really exist in this like cozy fantasy world of my own making the majority of the time. That's like the inner me, and that's what this deck feels like. It's very much a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which is typically not like a deck that I would say is like sits really firmly in alignment with like who I am or even how I read, but I absolutely adore it. I feel like it takes these challenge moments that I see come through the Women in Myth. And it's not to say that this is a deck that is only for challenging times. That's just how I've been using it. Where it's been showing up for me is whenever I'm having any sort of a struggle. Doesn't really matter what it's around, whether it's personal, work, my channel, my creative projects, whatever it is. If I'm feeling any sort of resistance, any sort of struggle around it, I've been pulling one of the Women of Myth cards to see where that is, what's going on with that energy. Sometimes I get like, you know, from the guidebook messages to how to engage with it better or more appropriately. And then I'm using the tarot, the Tabletop Tarot, to expand on like, how do I take that like within, and how do I acclimate it, adjust to it, make any changes that I need to change, if I need to make any changes. And sometimes it's not so much about trying to change things or shift things. Sometimes it is fully about acceptance. And this Tabletop Tarot does just such an excellent job of that. They're both fantastic readers on their own. I also worked with the Women in Myth with another tarot deck, which we'll see in my end of the month wrap up, and it's fantastic. It's like amazing. I love that pairing too, but this is the pairing that I've been using most often recently, and a pairing that I've been using for kind of specific things, right? That specific work, which is kind of what ends up making it a memorable deck. So for me, memorable decks are just decks that I've either like done a ton of work with, or I've done some very significant, very powerful, very transformative work with it. And these two kind of sit in that alignment, although the Tabletop Tarot is like, I don't know, y'all, it might be my favorite deck of like 2023. If I had to pick like a favorite new deck that I got this year, it would probably be this one, because it is just everything that I love all in one deck. But it's a solid reader too. It's warm and cozy, yes, definitely sits in that space, but it also provides me the messages that I need, particularly when I pair it with this Women of Myth here. Again, it's really looking at, for me personally, anytime I come up against any sort of challenge or resistance, that's where this combo is coming in for me. And it's been fantastic. I've been really enjoying my work with it, and I've really done some pretty significant work and worked through some pretty big blockages and challenges and things like that in using these tools. So to wrap things up, I wanted to talk about the sort of little selection of decks that I had the biggest moments with in 2023. So I've got one pairing for you, and then I want to talk about one specific tarot and one specific oracle. The little pairing that I have is, it's probably not going to surprise anybody, but like my own oracle, right? This is the Sacred Threads Oracle. This is the deck that I created. I drew all these images. It's been a project that I've been working on for, I don't know, well over a year. It finally came to fruition after the artwork being done for many months and me struggling to try and write some semblance of a guidebook, failing miserably, and then putting one out anyway. I love this deck. It's, you know, it's my own personal practice wrapped up in a deck. So to me, of course, it has a lot of personal significance and would of course definitely be one of the decks that I've had the biggest moments with this year. But the pairing that really kind of just, I don't know, created this absolutely phenomenal moment of connection, and just, I feel like is the most perfect companion to the Sacred Threads, is the Quintessential Thoth Tarot. This is an indie Thoth-based tarot deck created by Lennon Smith. Both of our decks are available on like playing cards, and they are on the same cardstock, so it's like tactilely, it's fantastic. I am always at a struggle for how to articulate what happens with this pairing, because it's just magic. I don't know, it's just magic. This is like, it's like, it feels like alchemy on the table. And I feel like the Sacred Threads really just hones into that key element of something sacred for me personally, of course, but like something also that touches deep within, that goes down deep into the earth and then, you know, stretches up into the cosmos. And then you pair that with this gorgeous abstract nature of the Quintessential Thoth, where everything but that energy is stripped out of it. And it just, the two together, I don't know, they just do something really magical for me. Oftentimes the colors align, the shapes will align. Like, it's one of those things where sometimes you get these cards that hit the table and it is just like, they had to have been made for each other, right? They just had to. Like, there's just such this gorgeous communication that happens between these two decks. And this little combination is what I use when I want to like go so far deep inside self that I'm like in the marrow, right? I'm in the bone, in the marrow, but within that, there's also that connection to soul. And it is such a hard thing to try to articulate. There's always this struggle when I talk about this combo to articulate this felt experience that I just do not have the words for, because it's something that is visceral. It's something that happens on this deep internal level, and it just really allows me to dive deep into it. I work with this in just this exact combination, the single oracle card in the center and then two of the tarots on either side, and that is it. And I will sit with these. These are messages that are meant to be taken in, meant to be absorbed and turned around and integrated into self and soul. And then after some time sat with them, after some journaling around them, after days of them being in my space, then I will find the message that is there. So this is a combo that's like a super slow burn read for me. I like to sit with this energy. I like to have this energy around me, but there's just something that's just such this potent, almost like alchemical experience that is happening with these two decks together, which actually leads me into my biggest moment oracle deck besides this one of the year. So let me get that one out. Also, a little shout out to Louise at Crystal Haven UK for the absolutely gorgeous bag collab that we did together. She created this beautiful sacred spiral design for the Sacred Threads Oracle. She has it in the large size as well as the mini, so I also have a mini of this deck, and they're gorgeous. I have both. They're fantastic. Highly recommend them. We'll definitely leave a link to her shop below because this whole creative process was just amazing. And I just wanted to give her a little shout out for her beautiful bags. I have so many of these. All of my very special decks get a Crystal Haven bag. All right, so let's talk about the Oracle deck. The one Oracle deck that I had the biggest moment with in 2023. And this is the Wild Unknown Alchemy deck. This is the deck that like I love and I hate. I hate the shape. I hate the way the guidebook is put together. Like I don't hate it. I hate the fact that the numbering is different on the cards in the guidebook, but like all of that aside, I absolutely adore this deck. And my work with the Quintessential Thoth and the Sacred Threads really got me interested in the whole idea of alchemy on the whole. I really know very, very little about it. I'm still very much in the learning phase, and I've been doing a lot of work with this deck outside of the alchemy aspect of it. It's actually my most used deck for writing, so I use it all the time when I'm working on creative projects, specifically around writing, specifically around fiction as well. But it's the deck that also got me thinking about, I think I want to learn more about alchemy. And so it's the deck that encouraged me to kind of like start collecting and thinking about what I'm going to do in terms of that for the next year, because alchemy is definitely something that I want to begin to study more. This deck was kind of the jumping off point for that, but it was the other two decks and working with them and thinking about them in that alchemical nature that made me think that maybe, you know, a deck like this might actually work for me, because that sort of idea was what is so potent. I hate when cards get all turned around, but it's like impossible with decks like these. But that's what got me thinking about this. And then once I got it, like I think I've been using it actually most throughout the year because I was using it for writing. But when I started looking at it through the lens of actual alchemy, you know, what it's actually meant to be worked with as, it really, really piqued my interest for that. And I'm really excited to dive into it further. As far as an Oracle goes, like big moments, this one was a surprise. It was a surprise deck. I was surprised I liked it as much as I did. I was surprised I used it as much as I did, and I was surprised at where it showed up for me in my practice. I have used it for daily card pulls. I have used it for creative writing. I've used it for creative blocks. I have used it for what do I need to know right this 5 minutes. I have used it in spreads. I have used it like I can't even think of all the ways that I've used this deck. It's come out so many times throughout the year, and it's been one that I probably have had, like Oracle-wise, that I've had the most moments with besides my own that I created. I'm going to try to get this big bad boy all in frame, because this is the tarot deck that I had the biggest moments with throughout 2023. Nope, I haven't edged it yet. It's gonna happen in red. That's happening. This is the Diablo Tarot, and I've done videos, like full-on videos dedicated to this deck because I think it's amazing, and I have had some of the most powerful, most significant readings this year have actually been with this deck. This deck surprised me on so many levels. I am a fan. It is a fandom deck. I love Blizzard games. I have played all the Diablos. Kevin and I went through a very big Diablo 4, that's what we're on, right? 4, yeah, where we like binged that game forever. We're still playing it. I mean, I got sidetracked by Baldur's Gate, but we are still playing Diablo. And this deck, when I got it in, I really just got it as like a collector thing, right? Because it's Diablo, because it's Blizzard, and like I'm over here like hoping they do a WoW deck too, but I got it to be a collectible, like to sit on my nerd shelf with all my other fun nerd things, right? Like my Folk and Fairy Tales of Azeroth book and my Critical Role guide and, you know, all of my fandom decks that I own. I just bought this to go along with all of that. I never expected it to be a deck that not only was I actually going to love and read and work with, but a deck that would actually be like significant in my practice, that I would have done some very significant deep work with. And that's really what happened with this deck. I've paired it with a lot of other things. I have paired it with the Seasons of the Witch Oracle many times. I've paired it with the Horror Tarot. That's kind of one of my favorites. But often I just use this deck fully on its own because I get what I need out of it. It was very pivotal in some really deep, like really hard deep work that I was doing throughout the year and that I have been doing, that I'm still doing. Like, let's be honest. A lot of trauma work and a lot of kind of, you know, taking back your power kind of stuff. I don't want to get into it too much because like it is actually very personal, but that's my favorite Lovers card. I love that. Favorite Lovers card ever. Also has my favorite Empress and Emperor. Okay, maybe not my favorite Emperor, because my favorite Emperor is actually in the Yonasa Yaos deck, but second favorite Emperor. Favorite Emperor-Empress pairing is in this deck. Anyway, this deck just, it blew me away, and it has been the core of some very deep, personal, very transformative work that I've done throughout the year that I'm continuing to work on, and it's been amazing. And it's one of those decks that, like, I thought it was just going to be a fandom deck. It breaks all of my deal breaker rules. Did a whole video on that too, where I talked about this deck because it does all the things that I say I don't like in a deck, but I love it and it works so beautifully for me. And like, it was such a significant tool that like it had to kind of get a special place. If like this, I could have showed it in a pairing, sure, but really it's not about the pairing, it's about the deck, it's about the work that I did with it. And that's so much of what, you know, my memorable moments are with my decks. Is so much about like what I did with it, how I worked with it, and what the experience was. And those are the important things. Those are the things that really make an impact on me. So that's a look at my memorable decks of 2023, the pairings that I most enjoyed or most worked with, and a couple of the decks, Oracle, Tarot, and a pairing that I had the biggest moments with in 2023. I would love to know what your most memorable decks are for the year. I know there's a lot of similar videos to these going around the community. Standout decks one, I think there's some top 10 ones going around. I love those, they're fantastic. I really enjoy watching them. This is kind of just my own little version of that, but they all kind of sit in that same space of these were the decks that really made an impact on me this year, and I just wanted to share them all with you. I'd love to know what decks you would include in yours as your memorable decks of 2023, so definitely let me know in the comments below. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box of this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.